Okay.
Hello, everybody. This is Mike Andrade with the Solving Healthcare podcast. And today we have a super special guest, a man that is and will be a legend for achieving amazing outcomes within the public sector space. It is Dr. Mark Potts. And he is, well, let me just let you introduce yourself, Mark. Can you tell us a little bit about your background as an educator?
Yeah, Mike. My parents were actually educators, so I did not want to be an educator when I was young. So I was kind of a late starter. I was in my mid 30s when I started, but I went the normal path. I was a teacher. I actually taught special ed for a couple of years, and then taught high school social studies for about 6 years. And then I became an assistant principal, eventually a principal, a curriculum director, and then superintendent
Well,
was most recently.
So superintendent, tell us a little bit about that gig and how loving it is. Like, I'm sure you have amazing parents that tell you how much they love you. The faculty and
Absolutely.
staff, they just say how much they love you too. And so it's just like the Wizard of Oz, I'm sure. But what's your,
It
as a
is.
superintendent, what is the daily life and how much love and pain do you realize?
Well, yeah, you're right about that. It's hard to not drown in the adoration of you know of the parents and the teachers and everything. But no, actually, you know, I think the last couple of years, the tough part was, with COVID. When COVID came, that was a game changer. And then, as you know, in this country, so much political divisiveness that certainly found its way to school board meetings or parent phone calls or those kind of things. So, especially when you had to deal with things about, if you had to be remote or open, if you were, masking or not masking, if you were
Mm-hmm.
vaccinating or not vaccinating, all those types of things, people had strong opinions about. So I think that made it kind of difficult. But overall, I mean, it's just a natural progression, I guess, for it as a teacher, where you teach, you have students in front of you, your principal, you have the teachers that you're overseeing, and when you're a superintendent, you're kind of overseeing the whole works. You're overseeing the principals and all that,
Yep.
and answering to the school board.
Yeah, and understand it's a labor of love like anything, right? Like if there's growth in the position and you're growth minded, you get there. So
Yes.
tell us a little bit about the district, Ashtabula School. So tell us about the district that you were leading.
Yes. Okay. Well, it was a town I grew up in, so it's especially personal to me. The outcomes were not that they wouldn't have been important somewhere else, but they were especially personal because it was my hometown. It was the schools not actually the buildings I attended. They were new buildings since I had attended, but it was the schools I'd attended. So when I was growing up, a few years back, it was really a blue collar working class town. Um, the homes were really very modest, but most people were able to own their own homes. We had a lot of union factories that were there. So people earned a livable wage. Well, then about the time when I was getting out of high school, during the 80s is when everything started kind of shutting down and moving south. And a lot of our biggest employers closed. And when they closed, they took with them, of course, management. They took the engineers, they took the accounting
Mhm.
people, they took pretty much the skilled and educated with them, and they left behind the folks that were just workers. They were unskilled labor. They knew how to run their machine or their press or their lathe, but they got left behind. And since that time, the population has really declined in number, and it's a totally different looking place than I grew up in. So when I started
So,
school there, it was about 7,300 students, and when I took over superintendent, it was about 3,500. So it was less than half the people, less than half the students that were there when I was growing up. And
well,
then now it's 100% free lunch for the school district. 100% of the kids get free lunch, and then you have all the normal poverty issues. We have a lot of Section 8 housing. A lot of the majority of people in the city don't own their house. It's a majority renter. So you just have the normal crime and drug issues, and then kids growing up in the midst of that, who are facing a lot of trauma. They're kids with parents in jail or kids with, in foster homes and all those kind of things too. So some extra challenges when there's, a high degree of poverty, just because those kids are, they're not coming to school really prepared to learn necessarily. They're coming to school just, they're in survival mode. So a lot of challenges with that. But
So, Mark, is it safe to say that this is a working class school district, working class city with some additional hardships that just come with being the labor pool that you described? Is that fair?
yes, that's fair to say. Absolutely.
So, can you talk to me about, like, what, as a school district, what problems were you facing economically at the time?
Right. Well, first of all, in Ohio, unlike some states, but in Ohio, um, a lot of the taxes are local that pay for schools, and they're based on property values. So we really had no tax base. The houses were, a lot of public housing, a lot of kind of rundown rental properties, things like that. So it wasn't like we were raking in the money from the local tax base. In fact, I saw something where we were rated the 8th poorest school district in Ohio, and we don't have county districts. We have local districts. That's out of over 600 school districts. We were the 8th poorest. So it was tough for us to get by. You were always trying to do more with less, but eventually that's really hard to do.
So how did you raise money, and were there any tax implications that were driving you at the time?
Yes. Well, we need to ask for a tax increase. So in Ohio, the citizens get to vote on a tax levy, which is a really tough sell when, most people don't want to raise their taxes. And that's understandable. I'm amongst those. I feel like I pay enough taxes. I don't necessarily want to pay more. And so you have to have people to vote in their tax increase, which is a really tough sell. And we actually, I thought we ran a pretty good campaign, but we did not. It was defeated by only a few hundred votes. But the tax levy was going to generate $1.7 million, and that would have saved us from that many cuts, because we were running pretty lean anyway. There wasn't a lot of fat to trim. I mean, we were running pretty lean. So by the time you cut more teachers, then you have classrooms that are too big. You have, you're really setting up kids to fail if you can't provide them with the support.
So what was the mindset at the time? I mean, it's not just you, you've got a leadership team, and you're relying on this tax income, or at least the opportunity, if it would create some breathing room. What's the mindset right then and there? Is it slash everything, or is it, do we discern where there might be opportunity? What was the mindset?
Yeah. It was really going to be a situation where we were going to have to cut more than we wanted to. Like I said, we tried to keep classroom sizes manageable. We tried to keep, kindergarten through 3rd grade at 20 if we could. We didn't want to get up, higher. Even the high school, we tried to keep it like 28. We weren't trying to have 35 and 40 in a classroom, because we just know that's just that's not beneficial. So
that's a disservice to
there were some
everybody.
things like that. Yeah, absolutely. So we were going to have to make class sizes a little bigger than we wanted. We were going to have to probably cut out some specials that weren't required by the state. So it may have been a situation where, they didn't have PE or art anymore in the elementary schools, those kind of things. They were things we didn't want to have to do, obviously. So.
Okay, so at the time, I think you also realized that I'm assuming you were turning over every stone, but it was coincidentally at the time, didn't your health renewal come up?
Well, actually, we did make changes with our health, but it wasn't because a renewal came up.
Okay, so walk me through what happened there, because this is an essential part of your revitalization, if you will, as a school district. So tell me what happened with the health plan.
Well, yes, it was a big deal financially. I was at a superintendent conference in Columbus, and some other superintendents were talking about their prescription rebate. And someone asked me, hey, well, what do you guys get in Ashtabula for prescription rebate? You guys probably get quite a bit. And I didn't know. I was embarrassed, because I was thinking, gosh, you ought to know that stuff. I didn't even know. I hadn't heard about a prescription rebate. So I texted our treasurer and CFO kind of under the table and said, Mark, what do we get? He knows everything. He can just rattle off numbers. And he sent me back like 3 question marks. So he didn't know either.
Wow.
So when I got back, we made it a point to call the broker that we were using And mind you, you know, a typical superintendent, and this is like most superintendents, you know, I had a lot of classes, a lot of training, had graduate degrees, you got all that kind of stuff. But nothing as far as health insurance. They would not even a single course on
Mhm.
health insurance. And it kind of doesn't make sense when you think about it, because you take over in that position, that's like that's usually the number two line item after wages in the whole works that you're in charge of and that you have no background in.
Yep.
So you're really just counting on somebody who that you know that you hope is doing a good job. But I wouldn't even understand the metrics at that time, you know, like, well, how do I know if they're doing a good job? You know, I just know when I took over, people said, oh, well, you know, we're a school district, we have good health insurance. Okay, awesome, you know, because everyone knows schools have great health insurance. And at least that's that's the common
Allegedly,
that's
it depends on the
yeah,
district for sure. Yeah,
it
but
does.
Mark, so what you're describing is not what it's not uncommon to most folks. Is you had a moment where you said, okay, what are rebates? And rebates,
Yes,
you know, depending on who listens to this, a rebate it is a I don't it's just a way to essentially give you money through a PBM contract. And but most advisors that are in that space of trying to maximize your rebate, I think what you found, they don't serve you and in the absolute interest of you and your district. So that was kind of a surprise moment. But then also
yes,
you touched on the mindset of how people purchase healthcare now. It's, you know, I don't understand it. I got this advisor that speaks alien, and I trust that, you know, they know what they're doing. But in terms of the mechanics of actually purchasing health care through insurance, what you're describing is not uncommon for how most people think. And it's attributing oh, I've got a logo that I love and it's good. But in terms of taking that onion and cutting it apart piece by piece, that's the relevant part of what I think you learned as a superintendent. That's super important for what we're talking about right now. And so could you walk us through, like, what changes did you make to your plan? And if you could complete the thought on what else you might have
sure.
learned as part of this discovery process to either piss you off or awaken you to the fact that there's a better way to do things.
Yes. Well, you know, when we tried to find out what our rebate was, we couldn't get a straight answer,
Mhm.
which was really upsetting to me. So that was really the catalyst for us looking at doing something different. Because this was my, you know, the trusted advisor.
Mhm.
And you know, my experience is someone won't share their data. It's not because they're proud of it. You know, they had all kinds of excuses not to, you know, they didn't tell us. So our treasurer knew an advisor who happened to be a Health Rosetta advisor that was local, that he was friends with, and asked him to kind of run the numbers and see what our prescription rebate should be. And it was between 350 and $400,000, which I was really furious about, because we didn't know that they were taking that money. We thought we knew what they were paying us, but it was evident there was no transparency. And then my fear was too, like, what else are they taking? Like if they're you know skimming, that was probably not good terms to use, but I was
All right.
if they're
Yeah, no,
skimming,
it's
you know,
fair. It's fair.
385,000, yeah, if they're skimming 385,000 off our prescription rebates and they're keeping that, what else are they keeping that we don't know about? So
Mhm.
then my trusted advisor, you know, lost my trust. And so that's why we ended up making changes. So we told them, and by the way, this was a fairly large group, consortium. So I think 43 or 44 school districts were in it. So
Wow.
even though we kind of ran our own plan,
Mhm.
um, you know, you know, we weren't happy about it. So when we said we were going to have somebody else do our prescriptions, then if they weren't going to do this, they said, well, you know, if you do that, then we're going to walk. And then we got all the warnings about, you know, you're going to ruin your career, you're going to lose your job, everything's going to fall
Yeah, yeah,
apart,
yeah.
and the whole world's going to, you know, the sky's going to fall, and all those things.
You know, Mark, I'm going to interrupt you just a second, but what you talked about
Sure.
in terms of purchasing consortium, there are so many public sector entities that are in this purchasing cooperative, and whether it's Texas, Ohio, or fill in the blank state, most of the time there's going to be that misalignment that I'm going to make a little bit of money, skim it, if you will, using your words, not mine. But there's going to be that notion, and you think about it, you're one district amongst 44, And so I can just imagine how many people on your plan, employees and dependents?
I think we had 385 employees, something like that, and about 1,100, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
Licenses,
So 1,100 members, or so 400
Mhm.
employees, 1,100 members. That's a really respectable size group, but you just multiply that times 44. Well, what value is that co-op really giving the school district? It's less than you might believe. And so, continue with your story though, Bob. Thank you.
Yeah, that's one of the things I learned actually. So that was a good point. So I'll try to make it a point to mention that. So really what happened then, we fired the broker. But mind you, we're in the middle of the school year. We're in the middle of a negotiated, collectively bargained union contract with two different unions, who are, it's a pretty strong union area. And we had to come up with a solution. So we were able to mirror what was negotiated with the
When you say that,
deductibles.
okay. And when you say mirror, you're talking about the plan offering. You mirrored the plan
Yes.
that you have right now. Okay.
Right. Yeah. So if the union had negotiated a plan that these are the deductibles, here's the coverages, here's the co-pays, here's the prescription costs, we had to mirror that because that's what was negotiated. We couldn't change that. They would definitely have had a problem with that. So
you walked into the union, said, "Hey guys, we got to talk." And they said, "We can talk all you want, but this is the plan design we must have."
Yes, exactly. Right. Right.
Very
And
supportive.
understandable because they negotiated it and
Yeah.
understand that
In good faith.
that there's in the contract, which is pretty substantial. Anything that you want to change that's in the contract, you have to go through a whole process, have a memorandum of understanding. The executive committee has to vote. You have to go through all that stuff. So you can't really just, slip a change in there. They're pretty good at catching those. So,
as a superintendent, you're going, yay.
Yeah. My fear was that was going to be the roadblock. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, this Health Rosetta plan sounds great. The union's never gonna, because there's this general mistrust, I guess you'd say, especially, you don't mess with their pay and you don't mess with their benefits.
Right.
And so I thought, well, for sure they're going to think we're messing with their benefits, and this is going to probably
what's
not
the catch?
go well.
Yeah. This sounds too good to be true. What's the catch, right? And so walk through, what changes did you make?
Yeah. So they kept what they had negotiated, and then since we were in the middle of the contract, we couldn't even discuss that changes. But we brought in a Health Rosetta model with some components that I could go into as much detail as you want on this. But we brought in a Health Rosetta model side by side, and we gave the employees the option of keeping the contract, what they had contracted, not they contracted, what they had negotiated.
Yeah. Got it.
And they could do that, or they could do the new plan. And we steered them towards the new plan by letting them know that, we were going to have a doctor on site they could see. We had a direct primary care doctor. There was a nurse navigator, a nurse that was assigned to the school district, that the nurse navigator would send them to the highest rated facility or doctor for whatever it was they needed. And if they went to where the nurse navigator sent them for imaging, for labs, for, the surgical center, orthopedics, wherever it was, if we sent them, they would have no out-of-pocket expenses. So they would not have to do their co-pays. They would not have to pay deductibles. They would get that with no out-of-pocket. And we were even able to do that with pharmacy because we had a local pharmacist that we negotiated with, and which we just couldn't do with the Walgreens and the CVSs of the world, So that part worked out good. So we steered them in that direction. But even so, only about 30% of the employees went for that new plan, the new option. And by the way, the union didn't have a problem with it at all. They said, so you're going to give us what we negotiated, and you're going to also offer us this other plan, which saves us money and sends us to the best facilities. We don't have a problem with that. So my fears were unfounded because it was very smooth with the union.
Yeah, so let me ask, what I heard you say, Mark, is you had to keep the plan design the same, but the offer to the employees. When I'm thinking about what you're saying, I'm saying, how much more do I have to pay? But the offer to the employees was, hey, we're making some enhancements to our plan. And I just want to make sure I understood that. What did the employees pay for this versus what they have now? Was it
Well,
lower?
they pay nothing on the new plan.
Okay.
So, yeah, it's nothing out of pocket. So, um, so I know we've had some employees, I know that have said that they feel like that was an additional raise, because that took away the deductible, that took away out of pocket expenses, co-pays, and all those things. So that's more money they get to keep. And to me, and Mike, I'm kind of embarrassed. I mean, I got it in my 50s. I didn't even know that. I didn't realize that doctors had a rating system. I mean, I guess logically you would think they would. Hospitals, I'm sure, would know what they were, but I didn't realize that was things that you could get access to.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that's one of the things. So, obviously, if my wife, my children, my mother, my sister, any loved ones needed to go see a specialist, gosh, I would much rather have them go to the highest rated person than to whoever their, primary care physician, whatever hospital system they worked at, to send them down the hall to, their coworker down the hall. So to me, that's one of the benefits of this system was we were going to improve healthcare outcomes by sending people to the best places.
Yeah. So, Mark, let me ask you, in terms of the clarification, you
Yes.
changed the promise to the employees and the union. You said, hey, look, we're keeping the plan design the same. We're actually
Yep.
going to make it free to you to enroll in this plan.
Yes.
And then when you need to use care, you can go wherever you want, which is according to the plan, you can do it. But however, if you pick up the phone and you talk to your nurse, and that nurse has access to quality information that most people don't. They have
Right.
access to outcomes data to show the infection rate, outcomes by the surgeon, the doctor, as well as the facility. So you're improving the odds of somebody getting to the right place by saying, we're giving you data you don't have yet. Plus, on top of that, you have a compassionate nurse that generally has 10 or plus years of experience in either the operating room, transplant, or emergency care. And they're going to essentially help you pick the right place for you. And if you do that, you pay nothing out of your pocket. Did I get that right?
Yes, that's correct. So that was the benefit for that because you have someone. I mean, the name is Appropriate Nurse Navigator, and I know there's several of those companies around, and we used a local one, but just helpful to have someone help you navigate through. I mean, you do that for so many other things, and then yet healthcare. That's what's more important than your health. You just kind of blindly stumble your way through and hope that you get good outcomes. So this was an opportunity for someone who would have valuable information to help, we use the term shepherd, to help shepherd them to the best location so they could hopefully get the best outcomes. Obviously you'd have the best odds.
Hey, Mark, one of the things that we didn't talk about, you had mentioned early on, was the direct primary care.
Yes.
And that's for folks that they may not heard this before. Talk a little bit about what that meant for your plan of having a physician on site, but what did that mean for employees in terms of how they use it
Yeah.
and the outcome? Yeah.
I mean, for ease of access, that was great. So we had a doctor that was on site, and we had two campuses. We had an elementary campus with 5 buildings and a high school campus with a high school and junior high. So he split time between the two campuses. You could obviously see him either of those places, and he had a local office too. That he was there like half a day on Saturday, that type of thing. So the ease of access was great. And then you talked about misaligned incentives a little bit, but gosh, that's really true of doctors too. And that's not to demonize them at all, but they work for a hospital system. They're under pressure to generate revenue for the hospital. And there was a report. The one that I saw was from all the way back at 2019 when we looked at this, but I recall because I just remember it was like one of those aha moments that I didn't, where I really said, wow, this is how this works, huh? So family doctors that work for hospital systems in 2019, on average in the United States, generated $2.1 million of additional revenue for the hospital. How do they do that? By, you go in with a sore throat and they order labs to make sure you're okay. If you go in, when they order prescriptions or labs or imaging or referrals, those are all things that generate money for the hospital, and they're working for the hospital's best interest. Not that they're not working for your best interest, but there's certainly a financial incentive for them to generate revenue for the hospital. When they're working for you, if you come in, they're going to order what you need, but they aren't going to order a bunch of extra stuff, so that saves a lot of money there. And when you do get those things ordered, you're going to go to places that you're direct contracted with, that's one of the points on here I was going to make. But if we have a direct contract with someone for imaging or for prescriptions, or for pharmacy, they're going to get you what you need, but you're probably going to get better prices, and you'll have a lot more control over what those prices are. I mean, they're transparent.
Mhm.
A lot of times medical is the only thing that I know of that you go to the doctors and get treated, then later they tell you what it cost, after it's already done. Certainly don't buy cars like that. You don't go buy a car and then, they send you the bill and it's way more than you thought it was going to be. And then they're going to take you to court if you don't pay it,
Yeah,
so.
yeah. In the district, did you ever give anybody on your team a credit card and say, "Hey, go do your best and let me know what you pay, what you bought after the fact"? You wouldn't do that, right? Healthcare is
No,
the
no.
same way. And let me ask, because one of the things about direct primary care that I love is it's a membership-based program. And so when you talked about
Yeah.
having a doctor on staff, I just want to make sure it's clear that you didn't set up your own clinic in the school. You basically had a membership fee that said, "Hey, if you're on this plan, this is your doctor, and he or she is going to come be with us
Yes.
when needed." But then also a really important point, what you talked about, and Dave Chase says it's the reason why hospitals are acquiring physician practices is kind of like the milk in the back of the store. And that the reason that milk is in the back, because all that stuff you walk through that you need to buy and you don't realize it, it's super easy to make more sales because you put the milk in the back of the store.
Right.
But within direct primary care, many times they have lab services, sometimes imaging, sometimes other things that they just do in their office, and they do it at cost. And so
Right.
it's a different paradigm. It's a different game when you're talking about having your own physician and the direct contracts on the periphery, because you essentially you get to direct who you pay, how you pay, and the convenience that's involved. So did I get that right?
Yes, you did.
So walk me through. Was there, if there's something else you wanted to say, please say it. But what I want to talk about is what happened. What was the financial impact? And what was the teacher impact?
Oh, yeah. Well, the financial impact was, well, when the teachers enrolled, so there's, in the beginning, there's the I won't say general mistrust, but it's kind of like, okay, well, that sounds
Mhm.
good, but we've had this before, we've had this negotiated plan for a long time. We've had this for a long time. There were some people who said, they didn't want to do the new plan because, they didn't want to go to the doctor the school hired. They wanted to go to the person they've been going to for 20 years. And that's understandable. So, so is that, as long as they didn't mind paying their copays and deductibles, they were allowed to do that in our plan. We didn't coerce anybody.
Mhm.
But so when we started off, about 30% of the people decided to take the new plan, the Health Rosetta model plan. 70% stayed with the negotiated. By the end of the year, it was about 50-50. But in that first year, just with that, less than 50% on average for the year, we instead of a double-digit increase, which we had been getting for the past few years, we had a 20% decrease. And for us, that was $2.4 million savings on the healthcare plan year over year.
Wow.
So
Wow.
so ironically, the levy that I mentioned earlier, we tried to pass a tax increase for 1.7 million and it failed. But then we ended up, by adjusting our healthcare plan, by giving our employees the chance for better outcomes, setting up a better system for them. The financial benefit to us was $2.4 million. It was more than what the levy would have generated. So that was pretty amazing. That was really unexpected. I thought if we could save the $400,000 from the prescription rebates, that I was going to be totally thrilled with $400,000 savings. But it was an additional 2 million thrown in there. So it made me really happy.
Wow.
The second year, it was a little tougher year on claims, but we saved 18% and it was another $2 million. They're in the third year right now. So that's yet to be seen.
Wow.
But so for the first 2 years, so it was $4.4 million in savings. And that was without, the contract negotiations are actually this spring for the new contract. And I don't know how that's going to turn out in negotiations. They may still want to have that, some semblance of that, what they had before.
Hmm.
But
Yeah, yeah.
I think more people are switching over. But in any case, the employees were happy. I mean, we were happy. they had those options, and it saved the school district a substantial amount of money while improving things. So I mean, generally you save money by cutting things. So what we did was we added value and benefited financially too. So that was really a win-win.
So let me ask you, was there any stories that resonate with you as one of the reasons to know that you made the right decision?
Yeah, I mean, there's a ton of them. So I won't go too many. I'll do a couple that I'll tell you a couple that were there. But the other thing too, when you talk about how we consume insurance, I mean, I have to tell you that most of the time before I was superintendent, my insurance covered something. I didn't care what the cost was, the insurance was going to pay it. So I don't know if I just thought like an insurance fairy came by and took care of the bills or whatever. I didn't realize it came like actually right out of our school treasury. So when there wasn't money for raises, well, that was because there was a 12% healthcare increase the year before. So the teachers did get raises because the cost per employees had certainly gone up, but they didn't see anything on their paycheck. They had a string of years that I think was like 6 years where they got zeros. And
Wow.
when I became superintendent, I wanted to make sure they got a raise, and we squeezed out a 2% raise. But it was, we had to trim some other things
Yeah,
back to
yeah.
get it. And so one of the benefits of this, if we start saving money long term like this over, and this is really for any public sector, leader, if you're able to save that much money in insurance, you don't even have to move that out of the payroll side of things. You could put that on the paycheck instead of to the insurance companies. And because it's so hard right now, especially in education. I would say that's probably not fair to say, especially in education, but just being able to attract and retain employees, I think that's tough everywhere.
Yep.
But it's really tough to attract and retain teachers now. It's become a less desirable job in the last several years, and this is one way to do it. The pay is so low, but if you can give them outstanding benefits and you're able to put more money on the pay side of things, it didn't cost the district any additional money, but you could maybe help attract or retain better teachers.
Yeah, but not only that, Mark, you're talking about essentially giving folks certainty around, hey, you're never really sure of what's going to happen when you need
Right.
care, but we're using evidence to show you're going to the right place. So that's certainly
Yes.
number one. But then also the certainty is if you follow this advice and you follow, the choices that you're given, you actually pay nothing out of your pocket. And so you want to talk about creating even more certainty from the pocketbooks, right? So you have many
Yes.
folks that just avoid care, or they limp through because they got to choose: do I put food on the table, pay rent, or get health care? And so I would imagine that had a pretty significant and profound impact on your workforce. Is that a fair statement?
Yes. Yeah, that's very fair. That's very
Yeah.
fair.
Yeah.
When you said a couple stories, I'll give you a couple examples. And we didn't really talk about direct contracting, but that was kind of a big deal with this.
Oh, yeah.
So first of all, we want to send people to the highest rated places. But then once we identify who the highest rated places are, then you go and try to negotiate transparent pricing with them. So just a couple of examples that I've used in the past. We had 2 employees the first year, and just because this kind of lays things out, we had 2 employees the first year that needed knee replacements. And I'm sorry, one was an employee and one was a spouse of an employee. They were both actually redos, so they were a little bit more difficult. We sent the person that went through the nurse navigator, sent them to the highest rated orthopedic hospital in Northeast Ohio. Like I said, it was a redo, so it was a little bit more complicated. So it was about $38,000 altogether. That's everything: anesthesia, rehab, the whole works in a package. Generally, they were between 17 and 24,000, depending on the joint replacement negotiated with them. So this was a little higher. The other one went to their outside of our system in the negotiated plan. Their doctor sent them, through the hospital system. They went to somebody who really wasn't bad, but the doctor that we had sent them to was like a 94 rating, 94th percentile. The person they went to at this big hospital system was like a 77. So they weren't bad, they weren't a bad doctor, but it was not as highly rated. Yes.
Is it safe to say it was one of those billboard hospitals that you drive by and they advertise how
Absolutely.
great quality they are and we're the best ever because we've got the whatever seal of approval? Was it that
Yes.
type of environment? Okay,
Yeah,
so
that spend lots of money in advertising.
yep,
They're on the scoreboard at the the Browns and the
yep,
Guardians and the Cavaliers games in the Cleveland area and all that stuff. So
yeah.
yeah,
So
it was
this
one of those.
person was mesmerized by the light, the blue light, and went
Yes.
to that billboard hospital system. Yes.
Right, because you're constantly being bombarded with things
Mhm.
that they're the best, and
Yeah,
so
yeah.
so you feel comfortable going there, and they're not a bad hospital. I mean, I'm not putting them down, but anyway, they had some complications after this. They had some infection and some problems, and that bill for that one was $108,000 for the
Now,
same knee replacement as the person that got $38,000 and was actually back to work much sooner.
Mark, take a step back. How did you know, or what evidence did you have to show that the billboard hospital was not quite as good as the other one that listened to the nurse?
Right. Well, the evidence we had was just on the performance ratings. So we try to send them to the centers of excellence would be the term that we used. But so we just wanted to send them to the highest rated. And
But the
so
nurse
and even
has the nurse has
nurses,
quality data that most people don't,
they do.
right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
They have the quality data to say where it is. And I always think, I'm a sports guy, but I always think, baseball terms, when you think, if you're gonna have a pinch hitter, and you have a guy who's available to pinch hit that's hitting, 350, as opposed to someone that's hitting 150, you're going to go with the 350 guy. The 350 guy could strike out. The 150 guy could hit a home run, but you're going to go with the odds. And certainly, when we look at this, like this orthopedic hospital we sent to, they just do knees and hips. That's pretty much what they do, and they do a ton of them. So there's a ton of data on them. It's not like do a one-off here or there. They do a ton of them. So there was a lot of data to show that they were very successful at what they did. So
Yeah, so this is
it's
quality data that's purchased publicly either through Medicare or commercial sources. And so this is information that most people don't have, because when you try to
right.
find quality rating for the billboard providers, you're going to get stuff like, yeah, I really like that doctor. They were really nice to me, but you don't get outcomes and infection rates and all of those things. And so uh, don't mean to belittle the point. It was just a clarification for
Yes.
the two scenarios and how you were able to direct traffic using evidence.
Yes.
And so in that particular case, the person that went to the billboard hospital, you ended up paying 3 or 4 times the price,
Yeah.
and the person was out recovering even longer because of the
Yeah.
infection, because of all the complications that happened.
And,
Is that?
and they had a miserable time. You know what I mean? Like it was
Oh yeah.
on top of that, they suffered as well. So it was just it
Yeah.
was just a bad situation. I'll give you another example, because when we left the consortium, and I think this is, when other people, if you're thinking about stepping out of your consortium and doing this, they're going to say, oh, the discounts. You'll never get these discounts
Mhm.
anywhere else that you get with this group. You do this stuff. Well, let me tell you what I learned about discounts. So, for example, in my personal experience, I had to get an MRI. We had negotiated with a center of excellence for imaging. It was, I think when I did it was $690. I think it went up a little bit. It might be $750, but a reasonable rate paid for the MRI. And of course, I was on the new plan. I was on the Health Rosetta plan, so I paid zero out of pocket. The school district paid the $700. So that's good. If I would have went to the local hospital system, the billboard hospital, it would have been between 4,500 and 5,500 for the MRI. So let's say if it was 5,000 right in the middle, I would have paid 500 out of pocket because I would have paid 10%. The school district would have picked up the other, the 5 out of the 5,000, they would have paid the rest, but they would have got a 40% discount. So they would have only paid $3,000. So on the discount that our consortium was, allowing us to have, I as the employee would have paid $500 and the district would have picked up $3,000.
Mhm.
Instead, I paid zero out of pocket and the district paid 700. So that's why I said you don't need discounts if you direct contract, because 40% off of what,
Mhm.
or 30% off of what? You don't even know what the price is. They put these ridiculously high prices and then discount them and make you look like you're saving money. But in reality, that whole discount thing to me is kind of a sham too. So,
Oh, yeah, it's more than that. It's a way for brokers and insurance companies to pat themselves on the back. They're the billboard, whatever, saying we can negotiate you the best discount. And you're right. What's the discount that you get off of a surgery that you didn't need to have? Or yeah, because it's the healthcare system is riddled with unnecessary care that happens, but you can still be proud of getting the best discount for something that didn't need to happen. So, but continue with your
right.
story,
I mean,
though.
I'd
Ben.
much rather pay $700 with no discount than pay $5,000 with a 40% discount. Do
Yes.
the math. Like that 40% discount isn't really
Yeah,
that
I
great
know.
of a deal.
So Mark, continue the story. What happened with you? Or was
Well,
that
that's
it?
what.
If that was it,
Yeah,
then we're
that's
good.
what
Okay.
happened. So
Okay, cool.
so when I got the MRI, because I went through that system. So, but that was, like I said, that was an example. And when you do that, when you have hundreds of employees, or you have 1,000 or more, people on your plan, how many times does that happen? So that's just how it is. And with the primary care doctors too, like, I mean, what you pay for that 5 to 7 minute um, five to
Mhm.
7 minute visit with the doctor, when so we capped at 600 for the doctor, his caseload. Prior to that, he was with a hospital system and it was between 22 and 2,400. So they're rolling people through pretty fast. It was kind of weird the first time I went because you could get a 15 or a 30-minute appointment. Like it was feeling awkward being there 15 minutes in the doctor's office. He was talking to me. It's like, don't you have patients to see? Like, shouldn't I be getting out of here? It was kind of awkward, but that
Calls you.
one of
It's
the
like the cable guy.
advantages of this, yeah, one of the advantages of this too, Mike, was because he has access to things. So, a superintendent, I might know that 78 of our employees, 78 people on our plan have diabetes.
Mhm.
But obviously, I don't know who they are. I don't get a report of who has diabetes, and I can go say, walk down the hall and say, "Hey, how's your diabetes going?" I was just, looking at your, you know,
You're
medical
like
files. I mean, obviously, you don't
luxury.
have any. Yeah, you don't have access to that, but the doctor does. So the advantage of having that was we try to get, to encourage to get the preventative care because again, that's getting better outcomes. So the doctor could contact the people that he knew were diabetic. He could look and see the people that weren't managing their symptoms regularly, that weren't taking care of themselves, and call them and set things up. He could look and see who was past due for colonoscopies or mammograms and encourage them and say, can we set you up? I see that you're over. It's really important to do these preventative cares. Could I set you up with an appointment? Those kind of things. So we were able to do a lot more prevention as well, doing it that way, which is all a part of the having better outcomes. I mean, I don't know about you, but I mean, I'm not trying to get in the front of the line to get a colonoscopy either. I'm not like excited about those things, but I
Yeah.
think it's probably helpful if the doctor's calling you saying, "Hey, you really need to do this. Here's why. You want me to set you up an appointment?" If I say, "Yeah, go ahead." So.
Yeah, I got you. So Mark, let's start wrapping this up, man.
Yep.
What was the impact? Obviously we know there was a huge financial windfall, but what would you
Yeah.
say that the teachers, the staff, the faculty, what would you say that their impact has been? Has it been a great thing, or just what's your feedback on that?
Yeah, I think so. I think they realized that. I think they saw this as a raise. I think they saw it as a way that that they're getting to get better care for themselves and their families, and that they're able to keep more money in their pockets. In some cases, it's been substantially more money in their pockets. If it was something major, where unfortunately we have cancer incidents or things like that. When you have zero out of pocket for those, you just don't have to worry about that. Gosh, that lets you, takes away. You're already, I'm sure drowning in worry in that kind of a situation that you don't need to worry about the financial part of that. You're covered.
Game
So I
changing.
think that part's
Absolutely
been
game
good.
changing. Yeah.
Absolutely. And um, I think so. I think that part's good for morale. I think that again, like I said, as you go down the road, initially the savings were kind of absorbed by deficits that we were, that we weren't able to fill in with the taxes. But I think that really any public sector group, if you can get in there where you have consistent huge savings like that on healthcare, gosh, you can work those into other things to make it a better place to work,
Mhm.
to help retain employees, to give better pay. to do, to give other incentives. So to me, that was really kind of a big deal about it.
So, Mark, how has it impacted you personally, and what are you doing now?
Well, how it impacted me when I saw how great this was, how replicable. It's really not rocket science. It's really there's just a few key pieces to it to plug together that could really make a huge impact, both for outcomes for your employees. And I want to say both. It's really more than two things. Both employees, outcomes for employees and savings for the district, but also when you think about it, being good stewards of taxpayer money, things like that, not having to ask for tax increases, not, to just be better stewards of what you're entrusted with as a leader of a school district or a public sector, municipality or whatever it is. So I think those were, those are really big deals about it.
That's awesome. So, what are you doing now, Mark?
Oh, yes. Sorry. Yes. So what I'm doing now. So I ended up leaving my superintendent job at the end of October. I actually tried to leave at the end of July, but they didn't find a replacement that they were happy with. So I stayed on as the interim for a few more months. But I left my job as superintendent. I had 3 years left on my contract. I was in good standing. Everything was fine. But what I'm doing now is I'm trying to share this news full time. Um, what public sector organizations can do by switching over to this plan. Like I said, as a superintendent, I'm sure that's true of city managers that, when you go to school, you aren't necessarily really very well versed on healthcare. It's just not something that you really study. So these are really relatively simple, replicable principles to this, and the model that Dave Chase has championed, the Health Rosetta Plan. Um, but it's something that I think that I can have more impact sharing this information and helping other school districts convert over than I really would even just leading a small school district. So
Wow.
so
So,
that
did
is
I
what
hear
I'm
you
doing.
right? You were so motivated by this. You said, "Look, I'm leaving this great paying job. We've had successes, but as an evangelist now, you're now the Johnny Appleseed, if you will, trying to replicate this model with other public sector entities, or really anybody that might have a want or need to see, how can I do this as a business? How can I do this to impact my people and maybe save money on taxes, or maybe not have to raise money through a taxing or something like that?" But it's just, did I get that right? It hits you hard.
Yeah, because you don't have too many opportunities where it's just such win-win. Normally to save money, you've got to cut things. This is something where you can enhance something and save money. This is something that, what's really more important than your employees' health. That's super important to want to take care of your employees. In a leadership position, like I said, you want to be very careful with the taxpayer money that you're, entrusted with. I just see this as win-win-win all over the place, and it's something that can be replicated. It's something that's been out there anyway, but I think we were kind of an early adopter for a school district. But there's other school districts that are also doing this with great success. There's other municipalities doing this with great success. And if I can share this one thing real quick, Mike, our city manager in Ashtabula was on our health insurance plan because his wife was a teacher. And so he was on the plan, and they had a situation with one of their family members that was, they used the nurse navigation system, and, without getting any details, really, he was so happy with the way things went, he adopted it for the city too. So our city
Well,
um, did that as well. So, and they saved substantial money and are getting better care for their employees too. So, like I said, it's really pretty replicable, and it's breaking the status quo. It's walking away from the safety of numbers, with the crowd. And like I said, I've heard all the scare tactics about leaving a consortium or leaving a group or leaving whatever. I just haven't really found that to be true for myself or for other people who've done it. So, it takes some courage to step away from the status quo, but gosh, the outcomes could be just fantastic.
Wow. So Mark, when people want to get a hold of you, how do they do that?
Well, they could find me on LinkedIn under Dr. Mark Potts, or my email address. I don't know if you're able to put that on the screen, but it's mark.potts831@gmail.com. And I'd be happy to answer any questions. They said, especially if you're in the public sector, I'd be happy to share my thoughts with you.
Yeah, and to close this out, Mark, thank you so much for your time. But also, if you're listening to this and you're at that space of, hey, this might be good for me, but I don't know where to start. Mark is an evangelist now for simple fixes, the Health Rosetta system. If you want more information on that, just go to healthrosetta.com and a bunch of stuff will pop out. But just understand, if you want that initial consult or that investment to say, what's possible with my district, what's possible with my municipality, or just what's possible, Mark is a great person to talk to because he's lived through it as the sponsor of this and the leader of the organization that would have gotten a lot of flack if it didn't work out. And so if that's you and you want to talk to Mark, please reach out to him on LinkedIn or at his email address. Mark, thank you so much for your time. It was a beautiful conversation.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate it.